Hello, thanks for joining us here on KXAN Plus. I am here with our KXAN investigative reporter, Kelly Wiley, to discuss some of the updates in the Austin ISD school consolidation plan. Kelly, there was a press conference earlier this morning, leaving a lot of parents with a lot of questions. What are some of the updates, the main updates that you heard from that press conference?
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine this would be really confusing. There's a lot of information coming at parents. There's already been three. The first plan came out in early October. Then we had a major change to that plan just 5 days ago. Yeah. And now this. And so here's the big overall picture. The district has said two major things here. One, they are delaying the sweeping district-wide boundary changes. They're no longer going to recommend that the board vote on that at this November 20th board meeting.
But is that a pause on the boundary portion, or is that a complete stop?
No, it's a pause. It's going to be a delay. So boundary changes are still absolutely on the table, and Superintendent Segura made that clear today. It's more so that the school board won't vote on it this month. So instead of the school board voting on whether to make these sweeping district-wide boundary changes that would be in place and implemented the next school year, this coming school year, instead, they're not going to vote on that right now. They're going to delay it at least a year. Now, there still will be some boundary changes, and there still will be some schools that close. The other big news that came out of this email that the superintendent sent last night and then elaborated on this morning was that originally, right, there were 13 schools that they recommended close next school year, and now they're only having the board vote on 10 of those schools. The three schools that the board will no longer vote on whether to close is Maplewood Elementary School, Palm Elementary School, and Briker Woods Elementary School. So let's kind of go over it again. In this November 20th board meeting, as it stands right now, the school board is going to vote on whether to close 10 schools. 7 of those schools have 3 consecutive F ratings from the state. They are supposed to have these academic turnaround plans. There are some state requirements around that. So the school board will still vote on whether or not to move forward with closing those schools and moving those students to different campuses. And then they'll also vote on 3 schools that are set to have program changes, mostly around their dual language programs. The school board will still vote on whether to close those schools and over those program changes that have been recommended. And then they'll also vote on some boundary changes that are impacted by those closures, right? Like, so the school would be closed if the school board voted the plan through. So there still will be some boundary changes for where those kids now go. The rub here, there are several issues, but the rub here is that this district still has not released what that would look like. So that's something that parents are going to need to be on the lookout for, particularly if your kids go to one of those 10 schools that is still on the chopping block and that the board is potentially going to vote to close. Those are the big changes.
And throughout this press conference, we heard from the superintendent that there were concerns about the integrity of the people involved in this process. What did he mean by that, and what else did he say regarding that?
Yeah, so last night when the school got this, when the parents got this email, there was a part of the email after the superintendent kind of broke down what the changes were, how they were changing their timeline. There was a section that talked about how we got here. And they essentially said that community members in the last couple of days, so this has been recent, right? So they released kind of that update on Friday last week. And then sometime between then, community members came forward and they brought forward concerns about individuals who were working for AISD and were tasked with taking community feedback and giving it to the people who would be able to somehow assess whether there were changes that could be made to this draft plan. And essentially, Superintendent Segura elaborated a little bit further today, and I say a little bit because there were a lot of questions that he would not answer.
Yeah.
But he said the the Office of Professional Standards is conducting an investigation into, he said, individuals. We're not really sure how many people they are looking into, but he said essentially he needed to feel like not just the conclusion that they came to, but the process that they used to get to these conclusions around what schools to close, about how to shift school zones, that process had integrity, and that he could go to the school board, he could go to the trustees with full confidence that we don't just believe that our plan is correct, but the process, the way that we got to this conclusion, to this draft plan, we can stand by that. And he said that this new information that came from community members that's now being looked into by the Office of Professional Standards made it so that he didn't have confidence enough to keep the draft plan as is, right? To keep the board on November 20th voting for those district-wide boundary changes, to keep the board voting on those 3 schools, Maplewood, Bryker, Woods, and Palm. We really don't know what, outside of that, the substance of these claims were. He stopped short of getting into more detail. He didn't say the names of the individuals that are involved in this complaint or in the concerns that were brought up. He only would say that the Office of Professional Standards is now looking into it. Our reporter, Jayla Washington, was in the room, and she asked specifically whether or not these individuals were put on administrative leave, or if they were terminated, or if they resigned. And the superintendent would only say that he made changes to the structure of the team. So we still don't really have clear answers on the severity of this and what it's led to personnel-wise.
Wow. So there are still a lot of questions up in the air. I was also watching that video. We have it on our website, KXAN.com, on your article regarding this topic. The full video, if anyone would like to watch it, is in there. But Kelly, what do you think the next steps are coming?
I mean, the next steps, all eyes are kind of on this November 20th vote, right? Yeah. He's kind of set the stage at this point for the confines of what the board will be looking at. They'll be looking at specifically consolidating these 10 schools, closing them, and the boundary changes around doing that. He said that it's not as if the closure of those 3 schools or the district-wide boundary changes are off the table. In fact, he said quite the opposite. He said it's delayed at least 1 year. So in the near future, those conversations are going to pick back up about that. And he said specifically in the spring, the district is going to be kind of laying out an academic plan that a lot of parents have been wanting to see be more fleshed out for how the consolidations will work. But then also later in the spring semester, they're going to start the conversation again about the district-wide boundary changes and around those 3 schools potentially also being closed, or who knows, other schools being closed. We really don't know, but we just know it's not off the table. The other big thing to look out for is this weekend. They're going to have a big district-wide meeting with parents and community members at the Delco Center. So if you have thoughts on this, now is your time. That's your time to go there and express those concerns, because at this point, November 20th, they've got to make some kind of decision around the 10 schools that are still on the chopping block and the programmatic changes that they're recommending.
And this weekend may probably be the only time you have to express those concerns at that meeting that Kelly was talking about, because that vote is coming up pretty soon. Mm-hmm. Kelly, you've been following this topic for a while now. What are some things that you are looking forward to, or that you will be implementing in your reporting in the near future?
I mean, there's still a lot of questions around how this will impact bond dollars, right? So like 2022 bond, people voted for modernized facilities and other improvements on campuses. And there's money that's already been spent at the schools that are set to close. The district at this point has kind of paused construction at any of campuses that would be impacted by this consolidation plan, as to not waste any more funds. But I think there's a lot of people who are focused on how will this money be redistributed? How will, what do we think about the money that's already been spent? How will those campuses now be utilized? So that's where I'm looking to. And I think also, when you make big changes like these, especially younger kids, they don't typically do well when there are big changes. And so I think looking at the academic outcomes that could result in big changes. I think also, there's a lot of history wrapped up in school zones and where kids go and what side of town they're going to school on. And that's been a big part of the conversations that the community has been having with Superintendent Segura. So it'll be interesting to see how they, especially with their academic vision, how they meet the moment and the concerns that parents have around that.
Well, thank you so much, Kelly, for sitting here with us today and giving us a little look at what that press conference had to say earlier this morning. We know you have to get out the door pretty soon. So if anyone is interested in reaching out to you or following up on this article, how can they do that?
You can always find me through email, Kelly, KELLY .WILEY at KXAN.com. I'm always looking to hear from our community and what stories we should be following.
Thank you, Kelly, and we will see you here pretty soon.
See you soon.